Good morning, everybody. I'm Zach Blanchard, and this is Political Brew. Joining me this morning are analysts, Republican political strategist Garrett Mason and Democratic political strategist Betsy Sweet. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here.
Nice to be here.
First up, President Joe Biden has signed a spending bill to avert a government shutdown. The new package, negotiated by Speaker Mike Johnson and top Democrats, will fund the government through December 20th. It includes more money for the Secret Service, but removes a proposal by former President Trump that would have required proof of citizenship to vote. Garrett, it wasn't expected this would pass before Election Day, but it did.
No, I mean, and I think, they're about to go on recess and head home to finish the campaign, right? So it was the last chance for, the Senate to throw some bills in Republicans didn't like and make them vote for it or against it. Same thing with the House. And I did read earlier today that Speaker Johnson had spoken with President Trump and they were on good terms. So I think it was just the last hurrah before the last 40 days of the campaign.
But Betsy, what does this mean for questions about Trump's influence in Congress?
I think it could have been the last hurrah, but it clearly was a lessening influence of Trump. I think they're seeing what's happening around the country and that Trump's influence, I think, is not increasing. If anything, it's decreasing. And so his, this requiring voter ID, it's already law. I mean, what he was trying to propose is already law. And it was really a showmanship thing. And I think it does say, listen, we're not willing to fight, and that the American people have lost their appetite for a Congress that is gridlocked and does nothing. And that's what this would have been. This would have been so I think it would not have worked in the Republicans' favor. I think they know it, so they came to an agreement.
Oh, I mean, I don't know about that. I'm not sure about President Trump's influence waning. I think President Joe Biden's influence is waning pretty significantly. And, this goes back to the general campaign altogether. Kamala Harris, she's taking credit for all of the good things that Joe Biden did, and she's not claiming all the bad things that Joe Biden did. So, I mean, I think if we're talking about administrations waning and going into decline, I'm not sure it's Donald Trump.
Well, but it's not Donald Trump taking credit for things that never happened. So,
all right.
Anyway,
meantime, members of the panel investigating the assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump in Pennsylvania says Secret Service was responsible for multiple security failings that day. The task force has been working together for 2 months now and held its first public hearing this week. Task Force Chair Mike Kelly said the Secret Service failed to properly plan and that communication wasn't cohesive. Betsy, as we mentioned before, Congress passed legislation in that funding bill to provide more Secret Service resources to both of the candidates. Is this enough of a solution here?
I don't know. I mean, I'm glad they're doing it. And I think that it's also some incumbent for the second attempt. I think that, the candidates have some responsibility, as candidates to sort of say, this is where I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to be doing. But I'm glad that they do it. I think there's still more to go about this investigation because there's a lot of unanswered questions, not just about the Secret Service, but in general. I think about what was happening that day, what was going on, the fact that we've never seen a medical report that, so I just think there's more questions, but I'm very glad that they're taking this first step, and I think it's a good thing.
Garrett?
Yeah, I mean, number one, I did not know that Mike Kelly was the chair of that commission. I think that's great. I mean, obviously, unfortunately, he has experience in situations like that. No, I think it's good. I mean, we just talked about Congress not agreeing on anything. Everybody agreed on this. It was a 430 some odd vote to 0 to fund the Secret Service measure specifically. But I mean, obviously there are systemic failures. When you have senators like Richard Blumenthal reading the report in a preview before it was released public and saying that it was astonishing the failures of the Secret Service, I mean, there's obviously problems. So no matter how you feel about either candidate, nobody wants to see them get hurt. And so I think this is a good step. Providing more funding for both candidates is a good idea.
All right, another big headline this week. New York Mayor Eric Adams indicted on 5 federal counts. The mayor accused of accepting bribes, free or discounted trips, and luxury hotel stays from foreign nationals and a Turkish official. Adams, a former NYPD captain and Brooklyn Borough president, has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. Here's what his attorney had to say.
You can almost picture them trying to cobble this together and try to tell a story so that they can say corruption at this press conference. And, they do that to tarnish him in your eyes. That's why they're doing it.
Thoughts on this, Garrett?
Yeah, I mean, I read through the indictment, and I wasn't that concerned about the free trips and airfares. I mean, some of those things are like airline upgrades, and I'm not sure I'm too concerned about that. What I was more concerned about was the straw man donations and his mayoral run. similar to what Maine has. New York City has a clean elections type model where they will match funds for local donors. And what it appears to be happening is that his campaign, with his sign-off, was attributing campaign donations to people who didn't make them and then getting a match for them. So if that's true, that is huge. I mean, Betsy and I both have extensive experience with clean elections in Maine.
Yes, we do.
Going through that process of verifying voters is very hard. So it's not just something that you assign a name to. It's something that takes a lot of work and planning. And that, if true, is a big deal.
Betsy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we agree on this. This is terrible. It's terrible, and I actually do have a problem with them upgrading. I mean, just and for the express purpose of having influence about something that was going to put a lot of people's potentially lives in danger. I mean, they wanted a building that was not up to code to be approved. Like, that's awful.
Yeah, I think going to that as well, it's when you look at the indictment as well, I'm not sure that that's something to be specifically indicted in this way on. But I think they were adding charges together to make a bigger indictment. And when you look at it all,
to paint that full of
it's not great. Yeah.
All right, here in Maine, election officials report a surge in voter registration as we approach the November election. The Maine Secretary of State's office reports more than 11,000 new and updated voter registration in just the last 2 weeks. That's compared to a little over 5,000 in all of August. A big push came on September 17th as part of National Voter Registration Day. Election officials also credit the surge to the convenience of online registration, which, by the way, is new in Maine this year. Are those the only factors at play here, though, Betsy?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm very excited. Yay to all of you who are new registrant voters. Awesome. No, I think there's a lot of excitement about Kamala. And if you look at the National Voter Registration Day, the efforts nationally were focused on young people, on college, on people who have never voted before. And I think that the fact that we have that many, 16,000 people since August in Maine, I think that's a real indication, anecdotal, of the people who are excited about this race, because this is the new thing. Trump has been in forever. I mean, people have known he's been running. So most of those people who are excited about him are there, and it's not a new thing. This is new excitement. It's new people. I think a lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of that is attributable to the Harris campaign.
Garrett, but there is still some excitement on the Trump side.
Yeah, I mean, we're excited too.
It's just not new. It's just not new. That's all.
Yes, Republicans actually want people to show up and vote. But I mean, I think one of the things too is, like you mentioned, there were some new laws passed this year that do make it easier to vote for people online. I also think that for once, and I'll criticize and then give a compliment to my own party, Republicans have shied away from trying to get people registered in a proactive manner. Democrats have always led on that. The new leadership at the RNC has put a huge emphasis on that, including here in Maine, is getting people registered to vote. So I think if you combine all those forces together, the overall victory is that people are registering to vote. And not everybody is like nerdy like me and wanted to register when they were 17. So I mean, we've got to get those people registered.
But there's a lot of kids who are 17 who will be turning 18 in
That's
November
right.
who are
And you can
registering.
vote.
I mean, it's exciting. Like there's an effort at high school seniors, which is really, I mean, no one's really paid attention to them because they're like, oh, they don't vote anyway. But so I think there's a lot of excitement
Plenty
about
of
that.
Garrett and Betsy's out there.
Yeah.
We love our nerds. All right, we're going to leave it there and take a quick break. The Weekend Morning Report is back right after this. Good morning, everybody. I'm Zach Blanchard, and this is Political Brew. Joining me this morning are analysts, Republican political strategist Garrett Mason and Democratic political strategist Betsy Sweet. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
First up, Independent Senator Angus King says he is endorsing Kamala Harris for president. King is up for re-election this year. He posted his endorsement on social media. Speaking with CENTER Maine this week, he says in some ways this is a first for him.
Time in my life, I've known a presidential candidate personally. For 4 years, Kamala Harris sat right next to me, literally right here, in the Intelligence Committee, which was a good opportunity to see and get to know her because it's behind closed doors. There are no cameras, there's no posturing, no press, if you'll pardon the expression, and that's how you learn what somebody's really all about.
Betsy, perhaps not a huge surprise here.
I don't think it's a huge surprise, but I'm glad to have that, that personal look, like I know her behind closed doors, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's good. I think the more important announcement is the 3 former chairs of the Republican Party who endorsed Kamala Harris today in Maine, right here in Maine. And I think that that's, along with Angus, I think we're seeing more and more people step up for that. And so I think those endorsements are rolling in. And again, I think we're seeing more of those. There are endorsements for Trump, but they are not. There's not a lot of new ones. So
Thank you for seeding that.
So I know what you were going to say. So I just feel like in terms of momentum, this adds to the momentum, and I think Angus is very well respected in Maine. I think it makes a difference.
Yeah, and Garrett, Angus King does have that level of popularity as an independent. Of course, he caucuses with Democrats, but does this carry a weight with those maybe more moderate voters?
Yeah, I mean, both of our senators do. They're brands. I think both Susan Collins and Angus King, they're beyond party. They're their own brand. Both of them have proven it in their elections. I think the only thing that was surprising to me is that it didn't already happen. I was surprised that this had happened. Listen, Angus King has endorsed only Democrats for president and governor. The only exception to that was in 2010 when he endorsed Elliott Cutler. So, I mean, those are the only difference. I don't think it's a surprise. I don't think it moves anything.
Well, I think it's interesting that neither of our U.S. senators, Collins has said she will not vote for Trump, and Angus is not going to vote for Trump. That means something.
Meantime, this week, Harris sat down for her first major TV interview since securing the Democratic nomination.
You can't raise corporate taxes, or if GOP takes control of the Senate, where do you get the money to do that? Do you still go forward with those plans and borrow?
Well, but we're going to have to raise corporate taxes, and we're going to have to make sure that the biggest corporations and billionaires pay their fair share.
Harris was interviewed by MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle, which has drawn some criticism, even from the New York Times, for not being hard-hitting. They discussed the economy, her opponent Donald Trump, and when asked about why polling shows voters feel he has a better handle on the economy than she does, she went after the former president for a loss of manufacturing jobs and proposed tariffs. Garrett, did Harris fall short here, or did she deliver?
I think it's typical Kamala Harris. There's no substance. It's all show, no go. It's a vibes election. And I think, the last point you just talked about, I think that was the point I was going to commend the interviewer on, is because she pushed back on Kamala Harris for that often touted half-truth that Trump lost all these jobs. Well, it was COVID. Everything was shut down across the entire world, and those jobs bounced back, and the Biden administration got credit for it. So, I mean, I was going to compliment her on her pushback of that, saying that that's not exactly true. So, this is the basement election. It's the Joe Biden basement election again. It seemed to work for him in 2020, and it appears that they have a good chance of making it work again this time.
Betsy.
Well, I think that one of the things that's interesting is we're seeing since that interview and before, more people have gone to Google both Project 2025, which is the Republican,
Which Trump has avowed.
Right.
Disavowed.
But that's the only thing he has. Everything else is a concept of a plan. So it's interesting the different standards that they have, and I think there's some sexism here. But I think that Kamala has now laid out a very strong thing, and we're seeing that gap widening of people who think Trump will do better from the economy or Harris. We're seeing that gap really lessen as she lays out help for the middle class, help for first-time home buyers, and then creation of jobs.
But in that interview, she did kind of stumble to articulate those plans.
Just on the corporate tax one, I mean, I think tax is a sticky wicket for anybody, right? We have to look at the wealth gap and the fact that corporations and rich people have not paid their fair share. But the minute you say the word tax, everyone says, "Oh, she's going to tax everybody," which is not accurate. So I think, I wish she had been stronger on that issue, but I also think it's a quagmire for politicians in general.
And staying on the presidential race this week, Trump and Harris's running mates, Tim Walz and J.D. Vance, will go head-to-head in the first and only debate of this election cycle. The debate will be hosted by CBS and moderated by Norah O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan. Betsy, will this really move the needle?
I think it can. I think it's support, and I think it's going to be very interesting. Vance is very polished. He's a good speaker, but I think he's an empty vessel for his own ambition, and he's flip-flopped so much over the last 5 years on, he's against Trump, he's for Trump. And so I think he does what is good for him, and I think Tim Walz is like America's dad, and I think that sense of, and he has done incredible things in Minnesota, turning Minnesota around, making it not only one of those prosperous states, but one of the happiest states. So I think it's going to be a great thing.
And Garrett, Trump himself has declined an invitation by CNN for a second interview against Harris, essentially saying it's too late. Is that the right move?
I think it's typical with the election cycle and the way that things are going now with absentee voting, to be honest. I think, people are voting. People are voting right now. And I think that debates need to be sooner in the schedule like they were. because I think it gives everybody an opportunity before the ballots start to be cast to do a debate schedule. So I think the past two that he has done is great. I do want to comment on the vice presidential, though. I don't think it's going to move the needle. I think vice presidential picks typically don't. I can't wait to hear what Tim Walz has to say about COVID snitch lines turning in your neighbor and shutting down the economy for way longer than any governor in America. And I think it will be a chance to give J.D. Vance an opportunity to remind people why people liked him. Hillbilly elegy, coming from a small town America, doing all of those things. So I am excited to hear it. I don't think it's going to move the needle.
All right, let's wrap things up with winners, losers. Garrett, you're first.
I think the winner this week is the text messaging companies that send political ads. They're making a ton of money. I have gotten at least 20 probably since I've been sitting here. I abhor them, but they are the winner because they're making a ton of money this week.
They make it seem like they really know you.
Yeah, they really do.
Garrett.
Or they guilt me into it, And I think the loser, and we'll get into this, but I think the loser is Maine people. We're going to miss you, Zach.
Yeah. So my winner of the week is two. One is all those people who are newly registered. You go, democracy is at stake. That's important. Get out and vote now that you've registered. And the three former chairs of the Republican Party who said to all the Republicans and moderates, you have to put country before party. And that's what they did. And that's really moving and great. And the losers are the people of Maine. Zach, you have been an amazing reporter, anchor, and host of Political Brew. Your insight, your interest, your curiosity, and your dedicated reporting has been a huge help to all the people in Maine so that we know what's going on, and we will miss you very much.
Thank you both. I will miss you because, yes, I do have some news to share. This is my last Political Brew. I have made the tough decision to step down from my position here at CENTER Maine after 8 years. And let me tell you, of all the things I will miss, this show will be the hardest to say goodbye to. So thank you so much for trusting us to try to make some sense of our chaotic political landscape. While we are so divided right now, this table has been a place where we can disagree without being disagreeable, and we need more spaces like this. Don't worry though, Don Kerrigan will be back here to take the reins. As for me, I'm going on to pursue a career outside of news. I'll have more opportunities to say goodbye throughout the next week. Thank you both so much.
Thank
you. All right, for one last time, that's going to do it for this week's Political Brew. The Weekend Morning Report is back right after this.